Good day, everyone. Scooter coming to you live from the Granville Guitars World Headquarters here in lovely St. Petersburg, Florida. Today, up on the bench, we have kind of a rare beast. This is a 1967 Marshall Super Lead, I believe. Yes, Super Lead, 100 watt. That used to previously belong to Mr. JD Simo. You probably know who he is. As a matter of fact, if you do an internet search for him, you're going to find a Premier Guitar rig rundown where he talks about this amplifier at great length. It no longer belongs to him, it belongs to a customer of mine. And it came in blowing some fuses, which I've managed to trace to several different problems. One of which is something where you hardly ever see. One of the fuse holders was actually at fault, and as you can see, I've replaced both of the fuse holders with appropriate holders that should last, outlive the rest of us. But one of them, the HT fuse holder, there's a little contact inside, and this fuse was an incorrect value and was allowed to heat up so hard that it disconnected the little contact from inside the fuse holder. I've never seen anything like it in my career, and I say that almost every day anymore, it seems like. Here it is, if we can focus on that somehow. It's this little brass contact that was up inside the fuse holder. It desoldered itself. It got so hot, and it fell apart inside there and caused the amp to shut down. So I've put in new fuse holders, because I always hate it when we just replace one fuse holder. You want to replace them both, otherwise it looks funny. So we took care of that problem, and the power tubes that were in it were drool-worthy vintage tubes, but were definitely not up to the task of this amplifier. This thing is putting out between 530 and 540 of B+. That is torturous, friends. That is really, really high. The poor little bias supply in this thing could barely keep up, but I was able to set it where I was happy with it. He mentioned in his video with Premier Guitar that it's bone stock. Well, no, it's not bone stock. It's had some things done to it, but none of them are heinous. All of the things that were done to this amp are things that I would categorize as keep it running. In other words, components go bad, things have to be replaced at a certain point. This bypass arrangement up here on the input has been swapped out, both resistor and cap, for appropriate values. This is the treble cap right there for the tone stack. I think, yes it is. That's not stock. These two electrodes right here, those are not stock, but they do go bad. This resistor right here, this 10K, this has not. It did not leave the factory with this one. You can see what their stock resistors would have looked like. They're these light tan ones. This is certainly an old resistor, and that repair has been done a long time ago. Something else that is a tip-off on these old amps, you can see some solder joints right here. If you look at this one and this one that are connected to these original mustard caps, those two caps there, are those the... Yeah, those are the tone caps, honestly, for that channel. Those two joints are original because it has this red see-through lacquer on them. That's from the factory. Marshall did that on all their solder joints. And the ones that don't have it have been heated up at some time. These look like original resistors, or certainly period correct. They may or may not be original, but that's been desoldered at some point. This has been desoldered at some point. That red lacquer is usually present. You can see, because these are not original, that joint's been compromised. This one has not. So that gives you a clue as to what may or may not be original as you're going through an amplifier. Down here at the bias supply area, we can see our bias capacitors. And the dead giveaway for those is that the positive end is actually connected to ground in relation to what it's doing, because the bias supply provides a negative voltage. So that's how that works in a very short sentence. This resistor, again, you can see that that one's been replaced, but it's quite old, which means that it was either replaced with an old part at some point or it was replaced a long time ago. It's had a filter cap job, and it's nice and hum-free as a result. It's handling its duties very nicely. Pots appear to be all original, because they also all have, let's see if I can get up close and then try to get this down here where you can see the potentiometers. You can see all of them have their lacquer in place along through here. That would indicate that those potentiometers have not been changed. This is the stock mustard presence cap. We have an original standby switch and a replaced power switch. Down here is power transformer and its various connections, taps, etc. And more filter cappage over there. That's the only one that exists outside of the chassis. All of the other ones are mounted up top here, as we saw right there. So that's pretty much it. I thought that some of you may be interested to see the inside of this amp. I'm not going to do a sound test on it because it sounds like JD's video that he posted or was posted with him, the Premier Guitar Rig Rundown. That's what the amp sounds like. It just sounds gorgeous. It's wonderful and full and fat, and it's a thing of beauty. Let's see here. Let's flip the. Well, I can't flip the chassis. Hang on one second, and we'll flip the chassis over. All right, here we are, top side. The 1967 Marshall Super Lead amplifier. As we gaze across the chassis here, we can see the signature label. The top one looks like Rosie. See something that might look like Will, Mary down here. So there's several names that have signed off on this amp. Unfortunately, the bit where the date would be is gone. But other numbers on this thing and other indicators on it are such that it's been dated as a 67. I've left the front three tubes, the two preamp tubes and phase inverter tube, have been left alone as it came into the shop. This is a 12AX7A, an RCA, gray plate, tested just fine, 138/129 on my ICO 666. In the second, we've got a Tongues RAM, Hungarian, 110/94. Also another good tube, real good tube. Tongues Rams are very, very fine sounding tubes in V2. Now, I realized from the video that JD showed, he was quite obsessive over the first tube and selection of it, and it is very important, but do not neglect the selection of your second tube as well in a Marshall design. That's really, a lot of magic happens in that position as well. And then your PI driver phase inverter tube is a Siemens, again, an old stock ECC 83. We've left that in place. Now, the old power tubes, which were misbehaving, and I think mainly they were misbehaving because they just could not handle the B+. It looks like they're a quad of Westinghouse Great Britain 6CA7s, and they may be just fine in another amp. But this one is sending out whack loads of B+. So I've opted for one of the few non-JJ tubes that I really dig. These Svetlana EL34s are just absolutely fantastic. I have a quad of Mullards here, and they compare quite favorably with vintage Mullards, in my opinion. But so do the JJs, and you know, those tubes are also very reasonable. Tried a quad of JJs. The Svetlana's just won out. I don't make any snap judgments about such things. I just put in the tubes, and the ones that sound the best are the ones that win. So that is the underside of the chassis pretty much. Let's swing it around here to the the rear. Get a good view of the back panel, called a plexi, as you know. New fuse holders. This is a replaced IEC holder, which is for a 3-prong cord. It allows you to use the right cord. You can use it domestically. You've got your impedance selector, which he also mentions extensively in that Premier guitar piece. It just pulls out. And this one, unlike a lot of vintage ones, this one's nice and snug. So we're leaving that at 16 ohms. Speaker jacks, serial number, and that's it. You know, it's a Marshall. There's, you know, most magic in this world isn't very complicated. And a good old Marshall, not very complicated. So, yeah. Well, I told you I wasn't going to do a play demo, didn't I? I changed my mind. This thing just sounds like God's balls. It's a lot of fun, folks. If you have the means, I highly recommend picking one up. So, there it is. I am not running it as hard as JD was running it in his Premier Guitar feature. I have the presence. Let's get down here where I can actually see things. I've got the presence on about 3. I got the bass off. I agree with him in that. I've got the middle about 8, the treble about 8, and I've got the volume. I plug straight into channel 1, which is usually my preference, and I've got that running at about 6.5 to 7. And it's plenty meaty and plenty loud and plenty vibrant. It cleans up really good, too. That's not something he really covered in the video. it's wonderful and chimey all the way through the volume control. So yeah. So when I told you I wasn't going to do a play demo, I guess I kind of lied. But do you blame me? It's a 67 Super Lead in purple. Belonged to JD Simo. What are you going to do? Sue me. Anyway, that's the end of this little bit for today. I am Scooter, believe it or not. As usual, coming to you live from the Granville Guitars World Headquarters. It's close to quitting time, can you tell? If you got any questions about anything we do here at Granville Guitars, seek us out on the web at granvilleguitars.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. And the blog is View from the Granville Bench over on WordPress. Once again, 1965 Marshall Super Lead, wonderful amplifier. Hope you enjoyed this little video. And you know what? Have a rockin' good day. All right, disclaimer time. I made a mistake towards the end of that video clip. I stated that this was a 1965 Marshall Super Lead, and it's not. It's actually a 1967. So, apologize for that little screw up at the end of the workday. It happens sometimes. I apologize, and so we're all straight. No one will have to correct me, hopefully. So yes, once again, JD Simo's 1967 Marshall Super Lead.